Yeshikoyach for those kind words of introduction. Bershus Talmid Chachomim, Bershus Anholas, Dirshu, Bershus Kol Nesayim, Kol Akol, HaKodesh Hazeh. It's a great schos to be here in Cleveland again. And Cleveland is a very special community. It's one of the first Dirshu communities. It's a unique community and very, very special. And I think as an example, the Moshe Berger, shlit, is a dogma. Making a simcha, middle of Sheva Brachas, rushing back to Cleveland, arranging everything, taking care of everything. The Mesiris for Torah, it's a dogma of what this community is about the essence of this community. We were just talking at the table recently about how he drove through the night. He drove 16 years ago to Toronto to join us in the morning, learning in the morning kollel, and to meet with me after davening, and took the initiative and took it with both hands. And that's what this community is. Torah, not in a superficial way, but kihem chayenu. Torah, this is our life. This is what our life means. This is what defines our life. It's a great simcha. It's a Siyum. The Sheva Brachas. It's tinged with the recent events in the community. It's a short divrei nechama. It says in Pirkei Avos that Asora Nisim Nisaz Nasu Abiseinu, the 10 trials, the 10, and the Avraham Avinu had his Nisyainus, Loidia Chibosa Shel Avraham Avinu, that he was tested with these 10 tests, Va'omad Bekulam, and he withstood all of these Nisyainus. That teaches you the Chiva of Avraham Avinu, and the Parshas Pshat is, and the way Rashi learns is, that the Chiva, he withstood all of these Nisyainus. He passed the tests. He passed all of the tests. Rabbi Yonah learns, Lo Yidia Chivasa Shel Avraham Avinu. Who was tested? Who was tested with this Nisyainus, Avraham Avinu? That the one that the Rebbeinu Shalom has Chiva for, the one that Rebbeinu Shalom loves, this Nisyainus. Because through Nisyainus, and through going through these Nisyainus, enduring and passing, one comes closer and closer to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Loidiach Ibasa, that he was chosen. The Kehillah should see a nechama and should gather together only in simchas. We're in the days of Sfiras HaOmer, it was just mentioned about Sfiras HaOmer, and we know the pasuk in Sfiras HaOmer says, "Svaratam lachem mimachras Hashavus." You count mimachras Hashavus chamishim yayim. So right, first day of Pesach, the next day you count Sfiras HaOmer. And when you think about it, it's a shtickle pellet. We just started Pesach. Just had the first day of Pesach. There's Korban Pesach, Chilas Pesach, Yetzias Mitzrayim, and there's a whole Chag. And you're just starting the Chag of Pesach. And right away, the Svartam Lachem. Count Sfiras HaOmer. What is Sfiras HaOmer? Count down to Shuas. And as the Chinuch and the Rambam says, you count the Aimer showing our excitement, anticipation. We're coming to the Nizan of Mount Torah. We're counting down to Shuas. We just started Pesach. We have a whole Chag. And our focus right now is on Shuas. You know, we have a klal, Ein Oisem Mitzvahs Chavilas Chavilas, Ein Marvin Simcha B'Simcha. When we have a mitzvah to do, our entire focus is on that mitzvah. We don't divert our attention to other things. We don't bundle mitzvahs together. We don't bundle simchas together. Our focus is on the mitzvah at hand. We just started Pesach, Zman Cheruseinu. And right away, Mimachris HaShabbos, countdown to Shuas. What's Shabbat time? Isn't that an exception to the column that we normally have? Kenzaim, the pshat is Pesach is cheres. And what is cheres? Torah. That is cheres. Ein ben chayan el mish oisik b'Torah. The focus is on cheres, and we define from the outset what is cheres, what does it mean, ben chayan, what does it mean, Yetzias Mitzrayim? It means get ready for Kabbalas HaTorah. Now you're ben chayan. You left Mitzrayim. You left the Shivud. You left the Memtaz Shari Tumah. What does cheres mean? Count down to Matan Torah. That's what it means. Bachya says there's 7 days of Pesach. You count 7 weeks. And after the 7 weeks, after that comes Atzeres. Shavuos is called Atzeres. There's 7 days of Sukkot. After the 7 days of Sukkot, there's Shmini, there's Atzeres. There's an Atzeres. The time of Sukkot is a time of build-up. And Shmini Atzeres is a miyuchad, a chag that's miyuchad for Klal Yisrael, Rebbeinu Shalom and Klal Yisrael, without the Shivim Umas. It's the closeness of Klal Yisrael with Rebbeinu Shalom. In the same vein, the intervening period, the seven is a build-up, it leads up, it's connected to the Atzeres, to Shavuos. The end, many times, what the Seif is, what the end is, that's Megala, that reveals, that shows what the beginning was. The beginning, it leads up, the end, it's connected, it shows that this was the mahos of what the outset was, what it started with. It began with cheres, it ended with Torah. The essence of the cheres is Torah. I mean, a Cleveland setting, it's fitting to say something over from the tells of Rosh Hashiva, or of Gifters Atzal, in a similar vein. In Always, the Mishnah says, Histakel b'shloisha dvorim, and diataboli dechet, la'an ata hoylech. Where are you going? If you look where you're going, it'll save you from chet. La'an ata hoylech, l'mokam, ma'afarima v'soleya. That's the end of a person. Poshet Pshat is that, okay, you see, at the end, Lachamei v'esrim, so a person will do tshuva. It will cause a person to do tshuva. Rabbi Gifter said, Rabbi Gifter used to spend summers in Toronto for several years. He used to be by the Nussbaums in Toronto. So I remember he said a shmooze in one of the Baltimore Midrashim on Pirkei Avos. He said, the pshat is La'anata hoylech l'mokam ofa ria seleya, and Rabbi Gifter Zatzal, in his inevitable way, he took hold of the shtender and was shaking, and he said, Vaila mensch is rima. That's what the gashmias of a mensch is. That's what he is now. Yataboli dechet. Because what is the Olam HaGashmi? The Olam HaGashmi is Rima. This is the Gatsam host from the Mensch. And Mensch is Rima. And when Gifter said that, you felt like the walls were shaking and the trees were going to fall down and that the whole earth is shaking under you. Only way he could say that. The Seif is Megala, what the Hashkafa is. That shows you what the beginning is. This is what the Mahos is. If I just go off on a slight tangent, talking about Gifters Atzal and some of the great Gedolei Yisrael of the Friedrich Gedeiros. You know, when I was very young, growing up in Toronto, I'm not sure what the community in Cleveland had, but Torah was very, very schwach in Toronto. It was just a young community, and the Torah community was very young. When I was growing up, when I was a young boy, there was no kollel, zicher, no kollel, there was no yeshiva, not even yeshiva high school, there wasn't a Beis Yaakov. Some of my older cousins, they went to public schools. Baruch Hashem, things changed and things grew, it grew. But one thing we did have, we didn't have a lot, but one thing we did have, there was a special shaykhus that we were able to have with Gedolei Yisrael. Gedolei Yisrael, great giants, were accessible. Remember, Rabbi Yaakov Zatzal used to spend summers in Toronto. So as a boy growing up, I used to sit right behind him in shul for the whole summer. I used to sit right behind Rabbi Yaakov. I was there constantly. That's the way it was in those days. We didn't have a lot, but we had shaykhs to giants. Giants of people that had the greatest integrity, people who were Gedolei Yisrael on the highest level, and the highest level of personal integrity as well. Before Dirshu, before the days of Dirshu, I was very involved in Chinuch Atzmai. Very, very involved in Chinuch Atzmai. So I had regular shaykhus with Rav Shach Zatzal. And I was very many times by him. And Rav Shach was that type of a gadol that if he believed something, you could not budge him. And he had the highest integrity. You could not pressure him or influence him. Whatever he believed, he was totally steadfast. I remember one time we had a slight dispute, so to speak, in Chinuch Atzmai. I wanted and raised money for a special program. The school year ended at 1 o'clock. And after 1 o'clock, the kids were dragged around. And so what kind of chinuch could you have? And how could you take, we're talking about kids that you wanted to bring to yeshiva, and if you didn't, then they would be lost, they'd be fry. And Rahman al-Islam, many words. So I wanted to expand the day, the learning day, which we did, Baruch Hashem. Some members of the Anhola were crushing under the budget, of course, very understandable. The budget was crushing them, then the money should be raised and go to the general budget. So we went into Rav Shach Zatzal. So some of the Anhola asked me to wait outside, and they went in first. And I suppose, I imagine, I'm quite sure they presented their case before I came in. I came into Rav Shach, and then we started talking. And, of course, they had a very strong point. They're crushing under the budget, so we discussed it. And Rav Shach heard me, and he smiled. And even though I was maybe 40 years younger than some of the Hanholo, and these were people that he had shaykhus with for years and years and years, and he hardly knew me, he deferred to me. You could not pressure him. With the utmost integrity. In more recent times, there was Rabbi Leib Zatzal, a person of the highest integrity. You could not manipulate him or pressure him, or Baruch Hashem, I had such a close shaykhus, the pain is still felt. He's still missing so sorely. These are good giants that we had this close. The Rebbeinu Shalom plants in every generation the nutrients, gives the nutrients that are needed to help Torah grow. And some generations have the rachos of Torah, some have the gadlus of Torah. But whatever it is, we have to nitzerois to the utmost. So I want to share with you a chiddush that I was thinking about recently that I think is appropriate and in some way defines this wonderful community, this chevra of Dirshu in Cleveland. In Pirkei Avos, at the end of Perek Beis, Rabbi Elazar Eimer Rabbi says, "Have a shakad lilmad Torah." You have to learn Torah b'hasmoda. You have to be diligent in your learning of Torah. You have to know what to answer to not be cursed. And know who you're working for. And you should know the Rabbi Shalom is trustworthy, he'll repay you. The Tiferes Yisrael learns this Mishnah, it's all about Talmud Torah. You have to be a masved, have a shakad lilmad Torah. The Dama should touch a lot because when you learn Torah, you have to learn it as if you're going to be questioned on every basic principle, on every axiom. You're going to be questioned. You're going to be challenged. So learn it like you have to answer to an Abikaris who's going to challenge everything that you say. Your every premise, your every axiom. You have to learn it with such a havona that you can answer with that, and you should know that the Rabbi Shalom will give you schar for all this and this. That's one Mishnah. 2 Mishnahs later, Rav Tarfon says, "Hu haya omer, lo yalach hamalach haligmar, v'lo yata ben choyim livatal mimena." It's not yours to finish, but you're not free. You can't take off. You can't retire from learning Torah. If you learned a lot, you get a lot of schar. And again, it ends off, and you understand? Rabbi Shalom is trustworthy. So what's Rav Tarfon adding that Rabbi Elazar didn't say? It's just a repetition. Rabbi Elazar says you have to be a masmid, you have to learn, v'kol kayach, and Rabbi Shalom will repay you. And Rav Tarfon is saying, you got to learn. You got to be a master. You can't retire. You can't, now retire and go live down south and forget about what Rabbi Shalom will pay you. So what's the shlit? What's being added here? If you look carefully, though, the end of the Mishnah, Rav Tarfon says, Vida, you should know, matan schoren shel tzadikim losud loven. The ultimate reward is in Olam Haba. Rabbi Elazar didn't say that. Rav Tarfon added that. It seemed to be a double portion. The ultimate reward is in Olam Haba. Rabbi Elazar didn't say that, and Rav Tarfon did. So perhaps the pshat is as follows. Rav Tarfon, as the Mishnah said, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was one of the great Talmidim of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai listed the praise, and Rabbi Elazar was a mayin hamizgaber. He was a mayin hamizgaber, constantly coming with new havanas, new chidushim, new levels and understanding of Torah. That was Rav Tarfon. Ken Zayin, the pshat is Rav Tarfon is addressing the Talmidei Chachamim. You want to be a mayin hamizgaber. You want chidushim in Torah. You want madregas in Torah. Have a shakad lilmad Torah. Don't let go. Yom and v'layla. Learn Torah. And learn it ba'amkus. V'dam ha'shatas v'lapikeres. Learn it in depth. Deeper and deeper and deeper. And you should know, if you do that, then you'll get rewarded. The Rabbi Shalom will reward you with what? With siyata d'shmaya in your learning the name of Torah. Because to understand, to have the great havana in Torah, the great hatzlacha in Torah, a person could put all his yigiyah, all his efforts. But just as the Mesil Siyum says, L'gabei avodas Hashem, a person could put all his havana, his zehirus in avodas Hashem, but ultimately it's siyata d'shmaya. A mayin hamizgaber, you have to learn yom and v'layla, and deeper and deeper and deeper, b'chol kayach, and the Rabbi Shalom will reward you. You might think that, how am I going to reach those heights? You'll have siyata d'shmaya. Rav Tarfon is addressing a different person. He's addressing a person, Rav Tarfon, Omer. He said, Hu haya Omer, lo yalach hamalach haligmar, v'lo You want to give up? He's not addressing a Talmud Chacham. He's addressing a more partial Yid. You think, how am I ever going to master the Torah? You think it's beyond me, and therefore I'll give up? No. Maybe you're not on the highest madrega, but you can't give up. It's not yours to finish, but you're not free from it either. And if you learn a lot, you'll get reward. And here he ends off, and you should know the ultimate reward is in Olam Haba. Even if you're a person who's not going to reach those heights in Torah, and you're not those depths of understanding, and you're not a mind on the Skaber, and you have to harv and struggle, and you don't see the great Paris of the great Talmidei Chachamim do, but you can't give up. You're not free to retire, and you'll get your reward in Olam Haba. Now listen to what Rabbeinu Yonah says. Rabbeinu Yonah says, "V'loy ato ben chayan libotel mimenu shel ataymer." I can't finish, and I'm not mechuyev to finish. So I'm not going to push myself. I'm not going to struggle. I'm not going to harv and shlit. Okay, I'll only learn an hour. So I'll pay my dues. I'll learn the daf in 20 minutes. I'll learn it in 30, 40 minutes. I'll pay my dues. I've done the daf. I'm good to go. That's my ticket to Olam Hazar. No, you're not. You're not the mind on the skaper. You don't say that lo yasar asasmel el mechoyim shvatz lo yichen adavar ki evet koni atzo aleha lahagis bayem v'layla v'az tatzliach esrachecha v'az tatzliach. We are workers, hired workers to the Rebbeinu Shalom. And we don't have, not workers, we're avodim. There's no option in saying, okay, it's not for me, or there's even no option in saying, I give up, I retire, or even to say, I'll pay my dues for a limited amount of time, and this is my ticket to Olam Hazar, I'm good to go. It is to put in whatever time we have, whatever koyach we have. B'leiv shalom, not ligmar, and it's not our responsibility to no shas b'al peh if we can't. It's not our achrayas to do more than we can, but it is our achrayas to do whatever we can. And to me, that's what this community represents. A desire to do more. A desire not stam to be yaitzer Talmud Torah, not just to say, okay, we've learned, we're kaveh Seder, we've done the daf, we've made a Siyum, B'leiv shalom, to want to learn, to know, to understand, to do as much as we can to nitzois our potential. And whether it means being mechanish kedushim, maybe it means whether it means being a baki in shas and paiskim, whether it means to try diligently, without any fanfare, but to try to the best of our abilities to wake up early, to learn, and then chazer, and prepare, and kihem chayenu. That this is the focus of our life, this is the focal point of our day, this is what the meaning of our life is, even though we may have other things that we have to do, but this is the yesod, of our lives, and this is what we struggle and want to do. Our Rabbi Shalom should give this kehillah bracha v'hatzlacha, and should be matzliach b'chol inyanim, and we should always be zoicha to come together in such great simcha.